Welcome to the channel. My name is Ardat Allen, and today I'm going to be reviewing Conway the Machine's Can't Kill God with Bullets. Now, this album comes after a hiatus of sorts, right? Um, we hadn't heard from Conway as much as we had. There were rumors that an album was coming out earlier in the year, and it didn't. I even did a short and was like, where's Conway at? Here we are. Brand new album, 18 songs, a few features, but not a ton. And we have the third part in the sort of God trilogy. I would say From King to a God was really where many fell in love with Conway. He's been rapping for a really long time, as has pretty much all of the Griselda camp. Back in the mid 2000s, he was going by Cannon. And he was nice back then. This is long before he was ever shot. So we've seen a pretty long and detailed documented career of Conway throughout the last 20 years, actually, but particularly the last 10. And I would say that this trilogy, the God trilogy, is really so far the opus of his career. Now, many would consider Reject 2 to be still his best project. Some people really like stuff like Slant Face Killer. But we'll talk a little bit later about where this fits in his discography. This album is really about redemption. It's about overcoming, and it is about being proud that you did so. The album starts off sort of braggadocious, sort of big, not as grimy as we're accustomed to hearing. But then we get other tracks that remind us of the vintage Griselda days. So what we see here so far is upon first listen even, you see that this is a very balanced album. There's a lot of different producers. There's Derringer, there's Conductor, there's Apollo Brown, there is Justice League, there's Alchemist, there's Timbaland. So there's really a very sort of motley crew of production going on here, which gives it balance, I think, sonically. Though the album starts off big, it does sort of devolve into a more minimalistic and traditional grimy approach. Songs like BMG and Lightning Above the Adriatic Sea feel more contemporary for sure. But as the album evolves, you sort of see an emotional arc attached to the sonic palette throughout the album. I like that Conway establishes himself by opening the album up very confident, but then still letting us into that dark and sinister mind of his, which we have all grown to love, or I know I've grown to love. By the time you get to songs like Hell Let Loose, you realize that you don't know where this album is really going, because you got Tony Yayo doing ad libs, and it sounds like G Unit mixtape era. Now, like I said, Conway was around during that time. He was just really young. He was still in the street, but he was rapping in, oh 04, oh 05, oh 06. So, I'm sure that he was pretty influenced by that era, hence why he got Yayo to come on the track. I mean, and this was a great move, a great move. But now we're in a position where it's like Conway establishes himself um, as this internal rhyme monster or this large and grandiose production. But now the album has taken this other turn and it feels darker and more almost mixtape like. So you don't know exactly where it's going. The Painter is classic Derringer, cold and minimalistic. But then you've got Crazy Avery. Then you've got Crazy Avery, produced by Timbaland, which some compare it to Some Like It's Hot on Jay-Z's Volume 3, I think it is. Uh, Also minimalistic, sort of. It's stripped back, but it's more classic Conway, but still sort of reinventing Conway's sound again. What we see, though, early on and throughout the album is Conway's use of internals. They have not gone anywhere. And in a day and age where hip hop lovers really focus on bars and really focus on punchlines and metaphors and similes and all these other things. We really, really, really don't get a lot of rappers that focus this much on just rhyming. Conway rhymes his ass off throughout the entirety of this project. Um, New Devils now is more of a contemporary style beat, and it's got a G-Herbo feature, but and I'm not against the G-Herbo feature, but I don't think that Conway himself sounds as comfortable on this type of production as he does on something like the classic Conductor or Derringer sound. But that's probably not just me, but some other people, but you know, whatever. Not everybody agrees. My favorite song on this project is probably Otis Driftwood. It is super vintage Conway. There's at one point a reference to Elon Musk and robots, which I love when hardcore street dudes start incorporating tech talk into the rhymes. I love that for some reason. I've always enjoyed that because it shows a level of awareness beyond just what we commonly associate with these people. And in my life experience, this is how successful street dudes usually are. They're usually smart and they usually have other interests outside of just the streets. And Conway, as does West Side with the wrestling stuff, they're super like aware culturally, right? There's a lot of pop and cultural references throughout their music. And I love that about the whole Griselda camp. The emotional peak of this album is at the end. Songs like Hold Back Tears, where Conway talks about people dying, a son, uh, a child, a granny. Um, it doesn't feel performative. It feels like Conway's really thinking about these things and upset. Um, he keeps saying, I had to hold back tears, uh, it's almost as if like he's justifying crying, like we have to appease a certain stereotype or a certain status quo, saying, oh, well, there's this imperative about street dudes that they can't cry or be vulnerable, that we can't just actually feel what we feel. We have to ignore it and desensitize ourselves and use drugs and alcohol and all these things, just like anybody else. That's not Conway. Conway is super vulnerable. I would say that that is the heart of this album is vulnerability. It is not entirely that throughout. It's not an entire album of just him pouring his heart out necessarily, but it's an entire album of honesty. And there is a lot of pouring out his heart. And Hold Back Tears is certainly probably my favorite. Uh, I think is my favorite example of that on this album. However, the Undying and Apollo Brown produced track is super reflective as well. There's a Khalid Abdul Muhammad sample at the end that I found to be super thought-provoking. And you have I Never Sleep, which really feels like a rainy day in the late 90s. Um, and I relate to this. I think that people who have a lot of trauma and are going through a lot don't sleep. I have a phrase that I say often that crazy people don't sleep. I believe it, whether y'all believe it or not. But if you've ever been in jail or prison, you'll see that the crazy ones don't sleep a lot. If you ever been to like a mental hospital, you'll see the crazy ones don't sleep a lot. Go to homeless shelters, you'll see the crazy ones don't sleep a lot. You go anywhere in the world where there's a lot of really crazy people, and you'll see that the craziest ones, they don't sleep much, unless they're knocking themselves out with drugs and alcohol, or they are prescribed something like Seroquel because they have lots of issues. There's a point on the album where Conway does his best Rick Ross impression on 17.5. That's fire. There's an Alchemist produced track called Organized Mess. It's sort of peaceful, but it's sort of spooky, and it's very much, I think, sonically representative of like duality. And I think Conway does a great job uh, making sure that the content matches that duality, right? Conway, sometimes will get really dark, but then other time, he'll sound super motivational, super positive, very much like I beat the odds, which is a lot of this album. Um, there's a lot of big talk, fashion talk. I think that as his career has progressed, we have seen West Sides within the camps on influence on Conway and Benny. They always talked about fashion stuff on some level, but I think West Side really made that part of the Griselda brand, um, almost an indelible part at this point, especially given their commitment to actual fashion shows and such. So, Conway talks a lot about fashion on this thing. Um, he's very braggadocious as always. Conway's always been that way. A lot of it's not. I'm great because I think that I am for no apparent reason whatsoever. It's actually I'm great because I have lived and embodied a life of greatness. I have survived things other people haven't survived. And I'm still here, and not only here, but willing and capable of rapping at a very high level and putting out some of the best art that this specific medium we call hip hop has seen in a very long time. I think Conway's mission has always been to prove people wrong. I think there was probably points in his life where he thought that his life was over or others wanted to believe it was over, but he fought that, and he has never given up, and he's continued to fight and fight and fight. And now, I mean, he has put out multiple classic projects. I don't know if this is a classic or not. I think it's early to tell. I am sorry for the late review, but I've been sick. But we will see in time. But this is a really well put together album. The arc, as I said, is as the album finishes in that emotional territory, it kind of takes you from big and grandiose to dark to emotional throughout. There's definitely a sort of consistent linear sonic evolution that you can see, I think. Um, is it as good as Reject 2? I don't know if he'll ever make anything that people call better than Reject 2 or Everybody is Food. But this is a great project. I think of the trilogy, of the God trilogy, you I'm gonna have to go back and listen to them all again, like, in a row, but and maybe I'll make a video, I'll rank them. But right now, I can't say, but I will say that I think any of them could be called the best. And this is no different than the first two, meaning it's at least as good or around as good as the first two in the series. Is it definitively better or slightly not as good? I can't say yet. I'm not going to do that. But it's around what they are at the very least. So all three are consistently good projects throughout. This is no different as far as that goes. It is well balanced. Like I said, there's a lot of producers on here. It's classic vintage Conway in many ways. But we don't get a Benny feature and we don't get a West Side feature. And I do find this interesting. They say that they're static within the camp. I don't know how true this is. And I'm not here to spread rumors, but if this is indicative of, their sort of state, maybe there has been some strife, but it could just be creative differences. And it's just brotherly love. We're taking a break from each other and we'll bounce back, which is kind of how I feel based on what I know. But as I said, I don't know all the details and I don't want to put anything that's not true on anybody or anything. That's not fair. But they are conspicuously gone from the album. But overall, I'm going to rate this album an 8.5, I think. Maybe a 9. I don't know. I don't like rating albums. Um, it's very good. It's just as good to me as the Clips album. I think that it actually is more introspective in places than the Clips album. The Clips album has Bird Don't Sing, which is very emotional and super introspective and vulnerable. But this whole album almost is vulnerable. And like I said, it's not beating you over the head with vulnerability every single second, but it's giving you a lot, or at least a little bit on every song. So with that being said, I think when you put it next to Jid's album, when you put it next to the Clips album, when you put it next to Alfredo 2 and some of the best albums of the year, I think it has to be in the conversation. I don't think that it's necessarily not as good. I think it won't be talked as much because I think people had already made up their minds about Clips before this album dropped so late in the year. So I do think it may be overlooked, but in time, we will appreciate this album for what it is, and Griselda fans like myself will appreciate it here, now, regardless. So I do appreciate you watching. I'm sorry that I'm late putting this review out. Like I said, I've been sick. I'm still a little stuffy. I'm drinking a lot of coffee, trying to perk up and get some stuff done. But thank you for watching. Um, Make sure you hit that like button. It really, really helps the algorithm. I watch my YouTube studio constantly. And trust me, when people are liking the videos, watching the videos all the way through, sharing the videos, subscribing to the videos, it tells the algorithm that that's a good video or that that's a video that other people should see or that they may be interested in. And I do get people interested in my videos and people watch my videos, but not everybody likes and subscribes. So please do that. You guys have a happy new year. I am back. I'm going to see you guys soon. I hope you enjoyed this review. Make sure that you watch more of the channel and more of Griselda on the way. Thank you.